Aberration. A state or condition markedly different from the norm. Aberration. Aberration. For example, in a moment of aberration, she agreed to go with him. It looks like an aberration in the history of humanity. We consider our defeat to be an aberration. Indubitable. Impossible to doubt. Unquestionable. Indubitable. Indubitable. For example, his version of the story was indubitable. His brilliance renders this film an indubitable classic. The indubitable evidence we produce bore down our opponents in the debate. Abhor. Feel hatred or disgust toward something or somebody. Abhor. Abhor. For example, I abhor all forms of racism. Most people abhor cruelty to animals. Spitting in the street is a practice that I abhor. Peruse. Read something, typically in a thorough or careful way. Peruse. Peruse. For example, she leaned forward to peruse the document more closely. Please peruse the information in our website. A copy of the report is available for you to peruse at your leisure. Laden. Of a quality or state, existing but not yet developed or manifest. Latent. For example, there was a latent thread in his words. Without training, his musical talent remained latent. We cannot find latent dangers here. Cheer. Yell, shout in a happy, excited way. Cheer. Cheer. For example, everyone cheered when the Brazilian team scored a goal. A great cheer went up from the crowd. I tried to cheer her up, but failed miserably. Whisper. Speak extremely quietly. Whisper. Whisper. For example, did she whisper in your ear at the meeting? Don't you know it's rude to whisper? I've heard a whisper that they're heading for divorce. Whine. Complain in an annoying, high-pitched voice. Whine. Whine. For example, they come to me to whine about their troubles. I'm sick and tired of listening to you whine. My kids started whining when I told them they couldn't watch TV. Propitious. Giving or indicating a good chance of success. Favorable. Propitious. For example, they should wait for the most propitious moment. It was not a propitious time to start a new business. He received a propitious message. Ramble. Speak continuously for a long time with too many details or different topics. Ramble. For example, you shouldn't ramble during a job interview. She's getting old and she tends to ramble a bit. I sat down and let him ramble on for a few minutes. Chat. Have an informal conversation. Chat. Chat. For example, the teacher was chatting with a few students in the hallway. I've had a long chat with Vinny. Whatever you want to chat about, we'll do it tonight. Stutter. Speak repeating some sounds. Stutter. Stutter. For example, he said, please don't do that. He was stuttering. He tended to stutter, which tried her patience. Despite his stutter, he emerged as a great teacher. Gossip. Talk about other people's lives, especially negative things or secret details. Gossip. For example, my neighbor loves to gossip. Don't believe all the gossip you hear. Their conversation consisted almost entirely of gossip. Snap at. Say a quick phrase in an annoyed or angry way. Snap at. For example, when I asked my wife if dinner was ready, she snapped at me. There's no need to snap at me. It's not my fault. He tends to snap at people when he gets impatient. Embroil. Involve someone deeply in an argument, conflict, or difficult situation. Embroil. For example, she was embroiled in the scene and there was no way out. I don't want to become embroiled in their arguments. I was reluctant to embroil myself in his problems. Rusk. Rudely abrupt or blunt in speech or manner. Rusk. Rusk. For example, his secretary was rather brusque with me. The doctor spoke in a brusque tone. His brusque manner hides a shy and sensitive nature. Language. Of a person, animal, or plant, lose or lack vitality. Grow weak. Language. For example, she continues to languish in a foreign prison. Large organizations languish and die because they don't listen. Others will languish and die shortly because of lack of proper food. Pertinacious. Holding firmly to an opinion or a course of action. pertinacious, pertinacious. For example, I can affirm that he's pertinacious as are few. This guy is so pertinacious, he'll never let it go. Questions buzzed in his head like pertinacious bees. Waffle. Speak or write at length in a vague or trivial manner. Waffle. Waffle. For example, my wife often tells me I waffle. Stop waffling about it, or I'll put your tongue out. Cut the waffle and get to the point. Intrepid. Fearless, adventurous, often used for rhetorical or humorous effect. Intrepid. For example, he was the most intrepid warrior in the kingdom. Some intrepid individuals were still prepared to make the journey. He's not really satisfied with his intrepid action. Coherent. Marked by an orderly and consistent relation of parts. Coherent. For example, he appeared hardly capable of conducting a coherent conversation. The government lacks of coherent economic policy. They were never a coherent group. Morse. The essential or characteristic customs and conventions of a society or community. Morse. For example, by not observing the Morse, she put herself in trouble. The Morse of that village are hard to believe. The last 30 years have seen great changes in social mores. Reciprocate. Respond to a gesture or action by making a corresponding one. Reciprocate. For example, although she did not reciprocate his feelings, she did not discourage him. They wanted to reciprocate the kindness that had been shown to them. I reciprocate your good wishes. Concede. Admit or agree that something is true after first denying or resisting it. Concede. For example, after repeated requests from the people, he finally conceded. The president is not expected to concede these reforms. I was forced to concede that she might be right. Behoove. It is a duty or responsibility for someone to do something. It is incumbent on. Behoove. For example, it behooves us to act like decent people in this situation. It behooves companies to treat carefully their workers. It behooves us all to learn how the health insurance industry works. Premise. A previous statement or proposition from which another is inferred or follows as a conclusion. Premise. For example, I will allow selling the property on the premise that you'll pay soon. Advice to investors was based on the premise that interest rate will fall. Fortunately, it is based on a false premise. Demise. A person's death. Demise. Demise. For example, the sudden fall led to his demise. The demise of the company was sudden and unexpected. My parents had mixed feelings about the president's demise. Surfeit. An excessive amount of something. Surfeit. Surfeit. For example, they were surfeited with the chocolate pancakes. There is a surfeit of managers in the company. A surfeit of rock thus blocked their vision and irritated their throats. Reputable. Having a good reputation. Reputable. Reputable. For example, I'll give you a recommendation for a reputable psychologist. My information comes from a very reputable source. We prefer to deal only with reputable companies. Jeopardize. Put someone or something into a situation in which there is a danger of loss, harm, or failure. Jeopardize. For example, by divulging secret information, he jeopardized the whole operation. His foolish behavior may jeopardize his whole future. This scandal could seriously jeopardize his chances of being reelected. Impudence. The quality of being impudent, impertinence. Impudence. Impudence. For example, her impudence was the main reason she wasn't promoted. Ignorance is the mother of impudence. He has the impudence to take things behind my back. Desolate. Of a place uninhabited and giving an impression of bleak emptiness. Desolate. For example, the travelers passed through this desolate land. The house stands desolate and empty. He looked as desolate as Ruth left. Disperse. Distribute or spread over a wide area. Disperse. Disperse. For example, they dispersed the bug killer over the field. Police used tear gas to disperse the crowd. When the rain came down, the crowds started to disperse. Phase. Disturb or disconcert someone. Phase. Phase. For example, she's so calm, nothing seems to faze her. He looked as if nothing could faze him. He wasn't fazed by their threats. Entreat. Ask someone earnestly or anxiously to do something. Entreat. Entreat. For example, please don't go, I entreat you. May I entreat a favor of you? I entreat you to believe in the sincerity of your boyfriend. Antiquated, old-fashioned or outdated. Antiquated, antiquated. For example, stop using antiquated phrases. He claims that the laws are antiquated and have no relevance. Her uncle is antiquated in ideas. Anguish. Several mental or physical pain or suffering. Anguish. Anguish. For example, to his anguish, she said they will never meet again. Tears of anguish fill her eyes. The anguish was so great that it turned into madness. Effeminate. Of a man having characteristics regarded as typical of a woman, unmanly. Effeminate. For example, it will not effeminate the boy's mind. His effeminate nature was unattractive to most women. He's got a very effeminate manner, voice. Epoch. A particular period of time in history or a person's life. Epoch. Epoch. For example, it was in the epoch of Socrates that ideas of the afterlife first took place. Einstein theory marked a new epoch in mathematics. This is a totally different epoch we are living in. Intrinsic. Belonging naturally, essential. Intrinsic. Intrinsic. For example, his talent for public speaking was an intrinsic part of his personality. The paintings have no intrinsic value except as curiosities. Flexibility is intrinsic to creative management. Quotidian. Of or occurring every day, daily. Quotidian. Quotidian. For example, television has become part of our quotidian existence. Intrigue against each other is quotidian in every company. After struggling with the quotidian task, she was finally able to go to sleep.